What we saw was terrifying. The president wanted to exploit the Department of Homeland Security for his own political purposes and to fuel his own agenda. The California wildfires. He told us to stop giving money to people whose houses had burned down because politically it wasn't a base for him. Month after month, he said he wanted to have a deliberate policy of ripping children away from their parents to show those parents that they shouldn't come to the border in the first place. A cyber attack, terrorism threat. He wasn't interested in those things. He was one of the most unfocused, undisciplined senior executives I've ever encountered.
Miles Taylor, a former Homeland Security official, now one of the most outspoken critics of his former boss, the president. Now, that ad you just saw is for a group called Republican Voters Against Trump, and we will speak to someone from that organization in just a minute. Taylor and some of his former colleagues in the administration have formed yet another group of Republicans who are trying to make Donald Trump a one-term president. That includes 70 Republican national security experts saying they're voting for Biden because, in their minds, Trump has gravely damaged America's role as a world leader and made the nation less safe. And of course, there is the Lincoln Project, a group of big-name Republican strategists and campaign veterans who are running ads eviscerating the president. I want to bring in our guest to discuss Tim Miller. He's political director of Republican Voters Against Trump. Also, he was Jeb Bush's communications director back in 2016. And Tim, I've spoken to a lot of folks like yourself, both former elected Republicans, folks like we just saw there as well with Miles Taylor. They had a specific tipping point. What was yours where you said, I can no longer, in good conscience, go along to get along with this president?
Hey, Richard, good to be with you. Well, I was the OG, I think. Trump and I got into some fights back in 2012 during that primary when he was trying to intervene. I was working for John Huntsman at the time. He was never acceptable to me. And the final straw was the Muslim ban. And that's sort of my dividing line. Anybody that went in after that, I think, was using extremely bad judgment is the best thing that you can say about it. And, but as far as our group is concerned, Republican Voters Against Trump, we're not trying to talk to people like me. We're trying to talk to people that did give the president a chance. And so I think that's where somebody like Miles's testimony is so compelling.
Tim, are we using the right terms anymore? Because the convention going on right now, it's not a Republican national convention. There's not even a platform. It's basically the Trump show.
Yeah.
At this point, are you trying to convert Trump voters, or are you trying to remind people they're Republicans because the Trump administration bears nothing to what Reagan or Bush or the other Republicans you've mentioned stand for? So who are you trying to change, actually?
Yeah, look, I wrote about this for the Bulwark this morning, kind of the Earth 2 Trumpers, like Tim Scott and Nikki Haley, who kind of sort of pretended like the reality of the administration didn't happen. I think that these voters are kind of the battleground, right? They're voters that are traditionally Republican. They don't like the president, but they get convinced about their hatred of the left. They get convinced when they hear Nikki Haley talk about the good things the president's done and paper over the bad. And I think that's the battleground in this election. It's about 10% of the party, which isn't enough to win a primary, but it's an extremely important swing constituency. It's the difference between a close Donald Trump win and a Joe Biden landslide if we're successful in winning them over. And I think when you go to rvat.org and listen to these stories, a lot of these voters are people that have just changed their mind in the last few months. They relate to the people that had given Trump a chance, and now they're leaving. And so I think that's the swing constituency here, and we can let the chips fall where they may about what happens to the party after the election.
Tim, this may be inside baseball for some, but this is right up your alley. What I don't get is, and I understand it's a transactional element of all politics, but if I'm Cory Gardner now, or if I'm Susan Collins, I have a real problem in my hands, and the president's not making my life any easier. What do they have to lose to distance themselves with the president if the first priority always is to win? At the end of the day, where he's going is going to turn off moderates, at least in really competitive Senate races, let alone races they're losing in. Why don't those Republicans break ranks with Trump now?
This is a great question. I wrote about this for Rolling Stone. If any watchers want to read 20,000 words on this instead of the short answer, but the short answer is this. They're stuck with the base. So, I said 10% of the party is gettable. I think 5% is anti-Trump. You've got about 40% of the party that is hardcore Trump. And if they even sniff that you're doing something to undermine them, they won't vote for you in November. And so if you look at somebody like Martha McSally or Cory Gardner or Susan Collins, they're worried about losing supporters on their right if they get seen as being too anti-Trump. And so they've made this calculus that they're going to go down on the ship with Donald Trump, if that's what it means. I think a lot of them are also scarred from 2016 when a number of people like Kelly Ayotte in New Hampshire, for example, jumped ship after the Access Hollywood tape only to see themselves lose in the general election and Donald Trump win. And a combination of those factors is leading to a lot of cowardice, frankly, from those senators, because that's the kind of political calculus that they've made.
Obviously, like everybody, you must have been surprised by what happened in 2016 and going even to the primary a portion of it, Tim. To that end, does Biden make a mistake when Trump goes where you know he'll go? Should he get in the gutter and fight with him on that level? Or does lowering himself, level the playing field? What's the right tactics with a candidate no one's ever seen before?
I don't think that Joe Biden getting down in the gutter with Trump is going to be effective. I don't think he's particularly good at that. I think it undermines his message. But what you do have to do is defend yourself aggressively, and I think that is something that we messed up with Jeb. I think that's something that Hillary messed up. When Trump is smearing you, you've got to correct the record, and you've got to correct the record clearly and quickly and harshly. And I think that Joe Biden was a little slow to the punch about that on Ukraine, but kind of came around and was benefited by the fact that Trump was so ham-handed in the way that he handled that situation. But I think that they're going to have to be very responsive because these accusations are going to get wilder and wilder as they get towards the election. And that's going to be their main job.
You know, Tim, Chris Shea is a good friend of the program, and he says not only, like yourself, is he not going to support Trump, but he's actually going to vote for Biden. But he says the Republican Party that he grew up in, he doesn't recognize anymore, and he wonders if it'll ever come back. Is Trump just, whether it be a 4-year window or, God forbid, an 8-year window that goes away and the GOP becomes what it was, the party you grew up in? Or has he forever changed the dynamic of a party that stood for so many things that he doesn't even pretend to represent?
Yeah, forever is a long time, but he's changed it for a while. Look, and this is a bottom-up thing. A lot of pundits, a lot of people like us like to pretend like these decisions get made, at think tanks in Washington and by, pundits on TV shows like this. What a party stands for is driven by what the voters want. And the voters wanted Trumpism within the Republican Party. And what you're seeing now is the voters that didn't want that were like Chris Shays, that were grossed out by the nativism, grossed out by the racism. They've left the party. They're independents now. Some of them are Democrats, while a new group has come into the party. And it's been a lot of blue-collar folks who didn't care that much about traditional conservative economic policy or strong foreign policy, but they like the cultural grievance side of Trumpism. And so what Trump has done is, in the most literal sense, remade who is in the Republican Party. And this new group wants populism. They do not want a return to, George W. Bush's compassionate conservatism from the 1999-2000 campaign. That's not what they're looking for. And so it's going to change. And it's going to change for a while.
Interesting stuff. Tim Miller, thank you, and best of luck with your group. I appreciate the time.
Hey, thanks so much. Anytime.
All right, everyone, when we come back, the head of the Postal Union joins us, and he is livid with his new postmaster and the cuts at the Postal Service is slashing service just when people need their mail the most.